Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. And in this, our third lecture, we're looking at the topic of the external environment of business. Business does not operate in a vacuum. It matters what's going on in the world around it, in the environment around it. And every business exists in an environmental context. Let me see if I can give you an example of that. You see here the textbook defines the external environment as everything outside an organization's boundaries that might affect it. So let me just give you a couple examples here. Some of you recognize this logo. You know the company name perhaps, Smith & Wesson, a company that has a long history here in the United States. And of course, what does Smith & Wesson produce and sell? They produce and sell firearms, guns. Now, this is not a pro-gun or anti-gun lecture. This is certainly not even a political science course. This is a business course. So just think about Smith & Wesson from a business perspective. I don't think that you have to pay much attention to the news to understand that American society's attitudes towards firearms has changed in the last 10 to 15 years, hasn't it? I think you know that it has. And of course, you know there are some very primary reasons why our attitude towards guns has changed over the last 15 years or so. Two words, unfortunately, school shootings and the tragedies that follow from that. And that has made all of us rethink our position on guns. And it's changed in our society from the days when we had cowboy movies to now what we think about when we think about buying firearms or what that means in our society. Now again, this is not a commentary on the rightness or wrongness of guns. I am simply saying this. What if you had the job as the head of sales for that company, for Smith & Wesson? Your job was all about trying to maximize the amount of revenue and sales of your products in the United States of America these days. Well, here's the deal. I don't think you have to consider very hard to know that things have changed. And if you, as the head of sales for a company that sells firearms in the United States, if you haven't been paying attention to the change in cultural attitude towards your product, you are not going to be doing a very good job on behalf of your employer, right? In other words, what happens in the world and the changes that happen in the world directly affect you and your company. And you have to pay attention to that if you are a business leader. I hope that makes sense. Let's give you another example. What is this? This company, Impossible Burger. What is their product? Well, it's a far departure from firearms. They make synthetic or artificial meat products so that someone who is a vegetarian or a vegan or for whatever reason does not want to eat a beef hamburger can still eat a hamburger made out of something that has no meat in it. Now, here's something to consider. This is getting more and more popular, of course, because of changes here in the United States, right? What are some of the changes that have brought about the desire to buy a meatless hamburger? Well, of course, you know very well. It is a greater interest in health. It is new opinions about eating a lot of meat in our diets. It is a desire, perhaps for some, to embrace a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle in their diet. All sorts of different reasons for that, right? And so the changes in our culture of late have now made it possible, have been given an opportunity to a company to explore ways to create and sell food products that don't have meat in them, right? Imagine if Impossible Burger or the Beyond Burger was made available for sale here in the United States back in the 1950s. With cultural attitudes about food and meat in the 1950s, do you think that Impossible Burger would have had a chance of earning a profit in that cultural time? Probably not. Now, let me just tell you, this is sort of a departure or a additional bit of information that has nothing to do with our lecture, but let me tell you why the Beyond Burger has been so successful. The Beyond Burger really truly does taste in your mouth an awful lot like a real meat hamburger, but there's no meat in it. You want to know why? It's because the Beyond Burger company has discovered a way to make artificial synthetic hemoglobin. What's that? It's fake blood. And so they inject it into the non-meat based Beyond Burger, so when you cook it up and when you first take a bite, it really does taste like beef. Why is that? Because beef, the great predominance of the flavor, is you're tasting the ironish mouthfeel of the animal's blood. And so for vegetarians and vegans, enjoy that Beyond Burger. It tastes like a real burger because you're tasting fake blood. It's kind of an odd, interesting irony, isn't it? But again, because our culture wants to have its cake and eat it too, or in this case, its burger and eat it too, the success of the Beyond Burger and other products that have synthesized artificial hemoglobin are now a thing in the marketplace. Indeed, the external environment of business really does matter. And so this diagram from the textbook, from chapter 1, seeks to give you an illustration of some of the broad categories of things that really can affect your business, right? You can see there things in the economic environment, events in the technological environment, the social cultural environment, the domestic business environment down at 6 o'clock position, the global business environment, or the political legal environment. So let's just talk very quickly about some examples of each of these. The economic environment, well, we have a couple of examples just in our recent history, right? The great economic downturn of 2008-2009, or the way that this coronavirus pandemic has affected the American economy. Or when things are in a boom time and unemployment is very, very low and it's very easy to find a job. These all affect business at the middle, what's going on in the broader economic environment. In the technological environment, new devices, new creations, right? The internet, or the ability to store all of our data in quote unquote the cloud, an extensible part or portion, an extension to the internet that allows us to store data on somebody else's server farm. Or other technological innovations like the smartphone, like autonomous automobiles, like artificial intelligence. All of these things have an impact on business. Sociocultural changes in the environment, as we've just talked about, right? A greater interest and concern about sustainability, about our planet, about our health and our diets, about the way that we treat people and diverse people groups. All of those things are recent changes in our sociocultural environment that affect how business does business in the world today. In addition, what goes on here just within our domestic business environment, as well as the impact of things that happen in the global business environment, perhaps halfway around the world. All of those things have an enormous impact on us here doing business locally. And finally, changes and updates in the political and legal environment, of course, have great impact upon us, right? New rulings and approvals by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, or new statutes and laws, new ways and understandings of the tax code. All of those things have a great potential to affect business. Now, in the real world, what we really talk about in business, and I've been part of many businesses that talk about at the higher strategic levels, having to do pest analysis. You can see there, PEST is a shorthand acronym for political, economical, sociocultural, and technological factors that will affect the business. And really, those are the things that you need to be aware of. That's the thing that when you get out there and get a career in the real world as an analyst, you will need to be constantly up to date and abreast of what's going on in the PEST factors: political, economical, sociocultural, and technological categories of factors that may affect your business. Why is this important? Why do we talk about the importance of the external environment? Well, let me see if I can give you an illustration. Do any of you play chess? I know that's kind of an odd question, may catch you off guard, but let me see if I can tell you why I'm using this example. When I graduated from high school, in San Mateo actually, I went to Hillsdale High School in San Mateo, and when I graduated, well, my freshman year in college, I was at UC Berkeley. I went to UC Berkeley right out of high school as an electrical engineering major. It's not how I ended up, but that was my first major. And on our dorm floor, I lived on the 5th floor of Deutsch Hall, which at the time was a dormitory that was all guys. It was an all-guy dormitory. And one of the guys on our floor was a chess grandmaster. He was a guy who was good enough at chess that during the summer break, he played chess tournaments, and he made enough money playing chess tournaments to pay for some of, if not most of, his books that he needed for college. He was pretty good at it. And, you know, a day came about when we decided, we were all sort of smarty pants, right? We figured, you know what, we're going to challenge you, Vince, to a game of chess. And I'll tell you what, we'll make it even. So it's 5 of us against you, 5 versus 1. And because you're a chess grandmaster, we're going to make sure you start with a disadvantage. So you don't get to start with your queen or either rook. No queen, no rooks. Now, for those of you who are even passingly familiar with the game of chess, you realize what a great disadvantage that is, right? Well, here's the deal. After about 20 minutes, Vince is telling us what moves to make just to keep the game going. Because the 5 of us versus 1 of him, he was still that much better than us. It's pretty humbling. Now, I tell you that story as a prelude because there's a very, very fine book that I've read that greatly impacted me. The book is entitled Talent is Overrated by Jeff Colvin. And one of the things that's in that book is trying to study what is it that makes some people extraordinarily high performers and others of us just okay. And the premise of his book is it's not really talent. It's a particular type of very hard practice. But here's an experiment they did in the book. I want you to think about this for a moment. They took 2 classes of people, chess grandmasters, and then people like you and me. We might have played chess a couple times. We might be okay, but we're certainly nowhere close to being a grandmaster, right? So they take the chess grandmasters, they take us. So first they take the folks who are chess grandmasters, right? And they take them and put them in a room, and in the room, underneath a veil, so they can't see it, is a chessboard. And the chessboard is about 3/4 of a way through an actual chess game. You got it? It's a chessboard, but there's not many pieces left on it, and they're odd positions because it's about 3/4 of the way through a game. They put the guy in front of the chessboard, take the covering off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, they sweep all the pieces off. Okay, you had 5 seconds to look at it. Now, put all the pieces back exactly where they were. Okay. They did that to all the chess grandmasters. Then, of course, they did it to folks like you and me, right? Bring us into a room, pull off the veil, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sweep all the pieces off. Put the pieces back. Okay. How would you do in an experiment like that? I can tell you how I'd do, right? And what then, more importantly, what the testers found, people like you and me, hit rate no better than 40%. The wrong pieces, the pieces we got right, they're on the wrong square, you know, really not a very good hit rate at all, right? Here's the interesting thing. The chess grandmasters, 95 to 100% correct. 95 to 100% correct. Whoa. Okay, but that was just phase 1 of the experiment. Here's phase 2. Same kind of deal. The only difference is, instead of having a chessboard that is 3/4 of the way through a game, you take a small number of pieces and put them on the board at random. Take off the veil. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All the pieces gone. Put them back. You know what happens? In that scenario, where the pieces are just put on the board at random, not 3/4 of the way through a game, the chess grandmasters, no better hit rate than us. Under 40%, just like us. Can you explain the difference? Here's the difference. In the second test, for both chess grandmasters and us alike, the pieces are just at random. And trying to memorize pieces at a random order is really hard. But here's the deal. In the first example, what were the chess grandmasters seeing that we weren't seeing? I'll tell you what. The chess grandmasters, when they took a look at that board just for 5 seconds, they have so much experience at chess. They're seeing an entire game played out. They're seeing the sequence of entire moves, how white went from here and black then responded and back and forth. They're seeing every single move that has brought this game to this exact position. And if we're honest, a really good chess grandmaster, even in that 5 seconds, has probably been able to work out 3 or 4 different possible endings to this game just by looking at the board that quickly. Does this make sense? Why do I tell you this story? Because this story is exactly why when you apply for a job and you get to the 5th or the 6th round of interviews and then they call you and they say, you know what, Tim, we're so sorry. We've decided to give it to someone else. You're very well qualified, but what that other person had that you don't have, they have more years of experience. Why is experience similar to this chessboard example I just gave you? Because what experience buys, hopefully, is the ability to see the big picture of how the whole game works, how all the important moves have been played, and what are the possible solutions, the end games, to win. You see, with experience comes the ability to filter out all of the noise and really pay attention to the most important things that are going on. At least that's what an employer hopes for. The ability to understand how the pieces of the external business environment can potentially affect the business. What can this look like? Well, the experienced manager may be able to sift through just a sea of emails and news and facts, and then say, whoa, wait a minute. All that stuff's noise. Did you just tell me, though, our number 1 competitor is dropping the price of their number 2 product by 13% next quarter? That is important. That is something we have to pay attention to. You see, the ability to sift through all of the noise that we all deal with every single day and pick out the most important primary things to pay attention to. Why? Because of long experience seeing really how to understand the factors in the external environment of business. In fact, I'll tell you, this is what this class is about. This is why I teach this class, because I'm firmly believing that some of you will be the next future leaders in business, and you have to understand how the game is played, how the external environment affects business, how to learn to watch out for what happens and what's important for you to pay attention to, how the game really works. I hope that makes sense to you. That is the spirit with which we'll conduct this class, what really works in the real world. I hope this lecture helps you to understand how important it is to begin to understand the external environment of business. Thanks for your attention. We'll see you in the next lecture.